Hello, Stitchers. Welcome to Stitch Please, the official podcast of Black Women Stitch, the sewing group where Black Lives Matter. I'm your host, Lisa Woolford. I'm a fourth-generation sewing enthusiast with more than 20 years of sewing experience. I am looking forward to today's conversation, so sit back, relax, and get ready to get your stitch together. Welcome to the Holiday Gift Guide episode of the Stitch Please podcast. I'm joined today by Alicia Holland for a deep dive into the amazing variety of gifts that you can give the sewers on your list this year. We will also be talking about two Oliso irons, the TG 1600 Pro and the Mini Project Iron, with thanks to Oliso for giving us those irons to try. Oliso also donated a Mini Project Iron to be given away on the Black Women Stitch page. We will announce that winner in this episode and later post the name on the page. This episode is a little bit longer than some of our other episodes, but that's because we go into a really deep dive into the notions, tools, books, and these irons that will be really great to have as gifts for new, intermediate, experienced sewists. And because there is so much information, be sure to check the episode notes for this episode of the podcast. You can find them wherever you listen to the podcast, but it also includes direct links to the products that we're discussing. And these links are to Amazon listings for the products. And because Black Women Stitch is now an affiliate of Amazon, the Stitch Please podcast gets a little bit of money when you use those links. So without further delay, here's Alicia and I talking about the Holiday Gift Guide. Speaking with Alicia Holland, who is an amazing seamstress, sewist, teacher, attorney. She's going to be presenting at Craftcation next year in 2020 on a fitting class. So she knows so much. And I'm really delighted to be able to talk with her today about what a holiday gift guide should look like and what should be on it. And I made a long list and I showed her the list. And so all the products that we're going to talk about today, there will also be links to them in the show notes. So you'll be able to look for yourself at the things that we're talking about. So welcome and thank you for being here today, Alicia. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. This is fun. Although I listened to that intro and I was like, who is she talking about? Oh, that's me? Oh, okay. I better bring it.
Yes, bring it, friend. You bring it everywhere you go. You can't help it. So I guess in thinking about the holiday gift guide, and we also want to acknowledge that we're going to talk about irons today as part of the holiday gift guide because Oliso has given us two irons. Alicia got I think it's the TG 1600 Pro. Is that what it's called?
Yes, it is.
And I got a mini, it's called like a Mini Pro. It's a project iron from Oliso. And that's what I was most interested in because I like to keep a little iron next to my serger, next to my sewing machine station. So we're going to talk about irons as well. And so I just want to give a shout out to Oliso for that. And there'll also be links to those products in the episode notes as well. So do you think, Alicia, it's worth dividing up a gift guide into beginner sewist, newbie sewist, and advanced sewist? Like, when you think about like what are the kind of things you want as a sewist? I mean, since you're pretty advanced sewist, I don't know. If you think about what's a good thing that someone could give someone that they might not buy for themselves or as a treat, I don't know.
Yeah, so I thought of it in kind of four categories, I would say. And so my four categories were beginning sewist and then kind of an advanced intermediate sewist because it's interesting. I think so many people call themselves beginners but are really not. They know and can do a lot more than they realize. So I kind of lumped the intermediates and the advanced together. Then my other two categories were, because always extra around here, so the upgrade ya category. So those are the things where, like, you've been doing this or you're trying to step your game up. And so it's more about upgrading the things you have as opposed to just adding things you don't already have. And then my last one was a Sewist-to-Sewist category. And what I'm thinking about in the Sewist-to-Sewist category is it's one thing for me to give my wish list to my non-sewing people, but it's something where when I am a sewist and I want to give something to somebody else that I know has an equal love for this thing. And so I might give them a different kind of gift than somebody that's a newbie or somebody that I don't know what they do in their sewing as much.
Oh, I really like that. I really like that. And what I like about it is that it's something that from sewist to sewist is something that we could use, and what brands to look for, as opposed to someone who is, I don't know, it seems like it's much more, not much more, but it's very thoughtful. It's a considered type of gift because it's considering the context, because a sewist to sewist gift shares a context. That's really cool. I like that.
Yeah.
So let's look at some of the products we have listed on our gift guide. And maybe we should think about how to divide them, because, let me just go over the list of what I had. And then we can try to tackle how we would categorize them up. Okay, so it's about 10 things on this list. Well, we all know that I'm terrible at math. It's not 10 things. It's 5 again, 15. It's 15 things. That's not bad. That's close enough. All right, so here we go.
Very Rodney Dangerfield. I have one question and 27 parts.
Exactly. Okay, here we go. So seam ripper, scissors, a bodkin, buttonhole knife, good pins, thread snips, a point turner, a pressing ham, and a pressing seam roll, the fast turn tube turner set, a pressing cloth, a wool pressing mat, wonder clips, a Gutermann thread box I think it's the box that has maybe 18 threads in it, and curves, like French curves for pattern alterations. That's what I have right now for the 15 things for the gift guide. And again, everyone, if y'all didn't hear all this, don't feel like you have to go scramble and write it all down. I'm going to do my best to get back to transcribing. So there'll be a transcript for this episode. But more importantly, in the show notes, there'll be links to all the products and you can just look through them that way. I also had a couple of books, which I think might be good sewist to sewist gifts. And so one of them is actually the one that I have is the one that you kind of recommended. You didn't give it to me, but you totally recommended it. And it's been great. And I'm hoping to sit down with it over the break and enjoy it more. That's the Fitting and Pattern Alteration book by Elizabeth Leidy and Judith Rasband. I think you told me about that.
Yeah, the Big Red Book.
The Big Red Book. Yes.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And then I like Fast Fit by Sandra Betsina because it has like certain corrections that are, easy to make based on your body. Like if you have a sway back, if you have larger upper arms, if you have, all these different things and how you can alter the patterns to make these adjustments. So those might be another example of the maybe of a sewist to sewist gift because, I tried it and I like it and then I recommended it to other people. So what do you think about seam rippers? We could do it in fives. Do it in fives. Okay. So seam rippers, scissors, bodkin, buttonhole knife, and pins. Are those for the beginning sewist, the intermediate advanced, upgrade you, or sewist to sewist? Those 5 things.
I think those would likely fall in the beginner section to me. And I had a couple of those on my list as well with a slight variation, which is I think everybody has a seam ripper and same goes for snips. I know that wasn't in this 5, but I put these 2 things in the same area. Everybody has the seam ripper because you have that little red one that comes with your sewing machine.
That's right.
Or in some little freebie kit, that sort of thing.
Yes.
But those little things are enough to make you quit sewing. If you have to rip out a long seam with that tiny little thing that is likely to give you arthritis all by itself.
Exactly.
And so what I actually put the variation of those, which I think is good for a beginner sewist, is to give them an ergonomic seam ripper and snips so that they can see, like, sometimes it really is having a better tool for the job just makes the job more manageable.
That's right.
And then for the others, like the bodkin, the point turner, and the buttonhole knife, I think those are great because those are not in basic sewing kits, and they're not ones that people commonly have. Like, I was like, oh, I don't even have a buttonhole knife, even though I do plenty of buttonholes, so that'd be a great one. So I think those are good to help somebody that's just getting started building out their kit.
Mm-hmm. And do you have a recommendation? So I have and I think we both have this seam ripper because for the Black Women Stitch Beach Week, Dritz gave us that ergonomic seam ripper. It has a light and a magnet. Remember that one?
I do.
And I like that one because I like the way it feels, and I like that it has, I like that it has a light and a magnifying glass on it. Like, I like being able to see what I'm doing. I like being able to see that. And I think I like your idea about that when you have like very, very basic tools or the freebie tools, that it makes a hard job worse.
Mm-hmm.
And, having this, that a 3-inch long seam ripper that's the size of a pencil, and you're like poking away. And it's like, I hate seam ripping, and everybody hates seam ripping, but you hate it more if your tools are not good. So I like the ergonomic one. But let me ask you about the buttonhole knife. So I didn't get a buttonhole knife until maybe I was more advanced and intermediate. And I don't know why. I guess when I first started sewing, we were supposed to put pins across the tips of the buttonhole, and then open the buttonhole with your seam ripper, like poke the thing in and slide it up. And invariably, I would cut through it and stuff. And I don't know why the buttonhole knife isn't a more basic or popular tool. I don't know. Why do you think that that's kind of restricted? Or is there a reason for it? I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm being hazed with sewing. I'm like, you mean to tell me that all this time I was trying to thread elastic with a safety pin, and there's a thing such as a bodkin or like the clover flat bodkin that doesn't like pop out,
Right. Yeah, it's a funny thing because I totally get the utility of a button knife. And like I said, that is a thing that I don't have. I just use my very fine point scissors and get in close with the buttonhole and have never had a problem with that. And so while I think the buttonhole knife is a great suggestion and is a lovely thing to have, I'm also reticent to say you must have that in order to sew, because I also find that sewing is one of those hobbies, like so many hobbies, that it can seem super expensive and cost prohibitive just to try it. And so can you make buttonholes successfully without a buttonhole knife? Absolutely, you can. You don't have to have this special thing. Is it a great help? Sure. Same with the seam ripper. Can you rip a seam with the little freebie? Absolutely. But is it kind of a pain in your patukis to have to go all the way down the side seam of a dress with that little thing? Yes. So I think the buttonhole knife is one of those things that it's a nice to have. And I think it's one that if you're trying to get better at it and are getting frustrated with things, then that is certainly one that having in some of your more beginning stages of buttonholing, as opposed to waiting until you've done it a bunch of different ways, would probably be a useful tool to have.
Right. So in your categories, would you put that as an upgrade, the buttonhole, or would you put it as advanced intermediate for the buttonhole knife?
Yeah, I think I would still put it in as a great gift for a beginner.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. How about scissors? What do you think? Do you think you start with basic level scissors and work your way up? And the same for
I,
pins.
yeah. And for pins, you're talking straight pins or marking pins?
Straight pins. Straight pins.
Okay. Yeah. So for the scissors, I also had those on my list. And I put the scissors on the upgrade you list
Okay.
because I think sometimes I think there are lots of really great basic scissors that you can start with because really when it comes to sewing, you need two things. They need to be sharp and you need a different set for your paper than your fabric. And so if you've got those two things, I think just about any pair of scissors is going to at least get you set up right. Then I think once you know, okay, this is my thing and I'm really into this, I think scissors fall in an upgrade just that where then that's when you're upgrading to maybe some nicer scissors. Like that's where you're learning, oh, dressmaker shears so I can get that flat bottom, or moving to Kai's or Gingers or the different levels of Fisker scissors. Right. Before I got to that level, I had a great set of scissors. I believe they were 3M scissors that I found in a 3-pack from Costco.
No kidding.
They had the ergonomic handle, which is also one of the important things because it's just, you're using your hands so much in all of your sewing practice that having tools that are comfortable in your hand, I think is more important than the brand that you have. And so my scissors, that 3-pack from Costco that I had were great. And the way I used them to maximize my scissors was I would take one pair out and use it for my fabric. And when it started to get a little dull, and then I think I was gifted a pair of Fiskars at a conference at that point, and Fiskars dressmaker shears. And so then I took that pair and turned them into my paper scissors because they still cut plenty fine. They just weren't as sharp for the fabric. And so I used those scissors for the longest time before I upgraded. And then I went into using, now I prefer Kai's and Fiskars, which are just the ones I have. I also think the Gingers are lovely, but to me, for my hands, the Ginger scissors tend to feel a little heavy in my hands, so I don't prefer them. But I do have Ginger snips that I think are great. So that's why I would put scissors in the upgrade you, because I think you can spend a lot of money on scissors, but you don't have to. And so that's a great upgrade gift.
That's excellent. And I totally agree with you about everything. I rotate my scissors out still. I will work on it and use it for fabric. And then I use the Fiskars, the one with the spring-loaded handle. And because I can't take those to a regular scissor sharpening place because I guess the blades don't open wide enough or something weird. So I end up using those for paper, and I just write the word paper on the blade in Sharpie because folks come in, and luckily I trained my beloved family to like if it's mounted on the wall, do not touch it. And my husband will tease me still, saying, "Oh, I'm just gonna go get some scissors from downstairs. You got so many. I'll just go get some off the wall. The ones next to all that thread. I'll get those. They'll be fine." I'm telling you, shady boots. That is what my whole. I guess all of us are just shady, but they will totally do that. And like if it's on if it's on the basket next to the printer, you can totally get them. There's 7 pairs of scissors in the basket. Get those. But also, I like this idea of you can definitely spend more money on scissors. You don't need to start with I like Kai a lot, but you don't need to start there. So I think that's important. And do you have the same kind of view about pins as well?
Yeah. So one other thing about the scissors, Kai's, they don't have to be super expensive. My pair of Kai scissors I found on Amazon. I will try to find the link for you so that you can put it in the show notes. And they were about $20 and came with the blade shield and my favorite scissors to date. So I will definitely give you that. And then another tip, just since we're talking about Shady Acres, because I don't want anybody's family members to get it by New Year's. because somebody used the wrong pair of scissors without knowing from a Christmas gift is I take a little remnant of fabric or a ribbon and tie it in the loop of my fabric scissors. And so that way I don't even have to worry about like writing on the blade or something rubbing off. Like I can tell visually these are not paper scissors because there's fabric on them.
Yes. So let me tell you a little story about my mother and her 3 children, of which I am one. And my mother would do the same thing. She had these heavy black shears and she tied this chiffon, she tied fabric around them. And I never knew if that meant these were for fabric or if these were for us to play with. So we would just take my poor mother. I mean, we would just take it and, these are scissors. And she would say, don't you see there's fabric on these? And we would say, yes. and she would say, what do you think this means? And we would say, we don't know. We just needed some scissors and these were the only ones we could find. And,
I had to cut my sister's hair. They were scissors.
Yeah. I had to make a paper doll out of cardboard. They were scissors.
I totally get that. So yeah, I think it comes with that and the training, like you said, with your little Shady Boots clan there. Exactly. That you got to train them up on it. But yeah, for pins, pins I don't have as much of an opinion on, which is surprising, I'm sure, because I seem to have an opinion on everything. But I am so much more of, this is a spoiler, so I'm sorry to spoil it, but I know it's on your list and mine. I'm so much more of a Wonder Clip sewer than I am a pin sewist.
Let's jump to Wonder Clips. Let's jump to Wonder Clips. So the next section. Wait, is there anything else that you? Okay, let's jump to the next section, and that's going to be Wonder Clips, a point turner, a pressing ham, and a seam roll. So that's 4 things: the point turner, pressing ham, pressing seam roll, and the Wonder Clips. Of those 4 things, where do they fall on your list?
Wonder Clips, I'm going beginner.
Okay.
Point turner, I think beginner. Ham, seam roll, and I would add clapper to that list to round out for the 5. I think those I would put at intermediate.
Okay. A clapper, that's a good idea. I didn't even have that on there. That's excellent. Well, let's talk about the, since we were talking about pins, let's talk about the Wonder Clips and why you would give those to a beginner. Wonder Clips are pretty new. I think, at least in more wide use. I think they hit the scene, how long ago? 5 years ago, would you say? Longer? 6, 7 years ago?
I imagine they're probably more than 5 years old because I've been doing garments for about 6 years now.
Okay.
And they were out when I got them in my first set. They might have been just a little bit newer because the funniest thing happened when I got my first set of Wonder Clips. I ordered them on Amazon randomly. And it was one of those where before everybody got hip to what these were. And so it was like 100 of them for like $5. And then I was like, oh, these are great. And a friend of mine went to get some and she got her set. And then when we went to go get some more, the price has shot up everywhere. We're like, oh man, everybody got hip to them now.
Wow. Yes. So a Wonder Clip, if you're not familiar with what it is, it's like slightly like a spring-loaded pressure small clip. It's about a 1/2 inch wide, though now they come in different thinnesses and thicknesses and strengths. And you basically use them to clip together the cut edges of your fabric. It's a lot faster than pinning. That's one thing. It's very, very secure. I don't really love to pin anything. Of course, I'll pin a sleeve in, because that really requires, a certain type of easing and all that. But it's really great for long, long pieces, like long pant legs and skirt seams and stuff like that. Is that an adequate description, you think, of a Wonder Clip?
Yeah, I think another way I would describe it is like a chip clip. is like a tiny little chip
It
clip
is.
that you can
It
use for your
is,
fabric.
actually.
Yeah,
That's better.
and I use them for shoulders. I'm not shoulders, for sleeves. And what I do is just for the part right as I'm going to be starting the sleeve, I put a
Yes.
couple of pins there, but then I
Okay.
wonder clip the rest of the way around. And I
Okay.
also think they are great for hems.
Oh, they are. That is so true. Yes. So that would go in the beginner category, like to start with Wonder Clips. One of the things I really like about Wonder Clips is that they work really well for stretchy knit fabrics that sometimes are challenging for pins.
Yeah.
And so that's another advantage of the Wonder Clips that I really like. Okay, let's look at the pressing unit, which is the ham, clapper, and the seam roll, and why that's a number 2 intermediate advanced type of tool or a set of tools.
Yeah, because I think for those, I think you're ready for those when you have decided that sewing is a thing that you're into and you're just either doing a lot of it or trying to step your game up. And so that's when it's time to invest in those sorts of tools. Because at the end of the day, there are other common household things that you can use as a substitute while you're still feeling out this sewing thing to see if it's your thing. So if push comes to shove for a seam roll, you can roll up a towel or a t-shirt and stuff it in there and get the same effect for what you need while you're trying to see like, well, what is this thing doing? How does it work? And for a ham, very similar. You can use a towel or throw a towel over a box or a mound of fabric or a spare piece of fabric, something like that. And then same with a clapper. Everybody has a dictionary, or if you are of a certain generation, then you have the set of encyclopedias. But basically a heavy book is what you need to give you the essence of a clapper. And so I think once you figure out like, oh, okay, I think I'm actually doing this thing versus, I know something we've talked about previously and kind of chuckled at is the people that are in the Joann's making the Halloween costumes that have never sewn anything. Like once you've gotten past a couple of little Halloween costumes and Christmas projects to say sewing is a thing I do, then that's maybe where you're at ham, seam rolling, clapper, where you get the actual tool at that point.
I think that's great. And I like the way you talked about what substitutions can be made, because I do agree that sewing can be, like almost anything, can be very expensive. And people are looking for ways to make it accessible and affordable. And if there's ways to say, right now, I don't know how much I love this, so I'm not going to spend the money on a clapper or the money on a seam roll when I could take a thick towel and, or I realize that there's certain steps I need to take to get the results I want. I'm now willing to invest in those tools to help get the results that I want. No, that's great. I'm just glad that you didn't say that, like, and for the pressing ham, just get a ham from like the Honey Baked Ham store and throw a blanket over it. And I'd be like, no, I don't think that's appropriate, Alicia. That's not going to get them good results.
I'm like, your stuff is going to smell funny. And so the animals will be chasing you. And
exactly.
you have ruined a perfectly good ham.
Or it's going to smell great. Ham is delicious. So it might be amazing. Yeah. What about a point turner? Do you use a point turner? It's like a bone, almost like a bone folder. It's pointed at one end and round on the other.
Yeah, the point turner that I use is the one that is the combined point turner and seam gauge. And so I have that one. I use that point turner. And frankly, sometimes some of the other things that I use to turn points and get them just so is I keep a chopstick at my sewing station. Yes. And so often I use that as my point turner as well, which until I learned about the fast turn was also how I turned too. So
I'm telling you, I have and it's so hard for me to kind of get back into the mindset of like where I was like 24 years ago when I started sewing or whatever. But I remember that. I remember The safety pin. I remember all of these things. And then when I got the fast turn, which I got, like I said, maybe 24 years ago, it was just kind of like the angels flew out of all the sewing spaces and were like, oh. I mean, it was incredible.
Totally. I was today years old the day that you showed us yours and how that thing worked. And I was like, wait, what? There's a tool for this?
I mean, and it's like now we can make that many more Appleton dresses with the really long wraps. We could do the Zadie jumpsuits with the really long wraps. Okay, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so actually this is leading us to the last part of the list. Okay.
Yes.
So that's the fast turn tube turn set, a press cloth, and a wool pressing mat. So that's just 3 things. And of those 3 things, and then I want to hear what you had on your list that I haven't said. Of those 3 things, how do you rank those in terms of beginning, intermediate, upgrade, or Sewist-to-Sewist?
Yeah, so fast turns, I would put in either intermediate, and also that could be a Sewist-to-Sewist gift.
Yes.
Press cloth, beginner. Because there's nothing sadder than thinking you've really done something and ruining it with a too hot iron on fabric and not realizing it.
I know.
And the wool pressing mat, I'm going to put an intermediate to advanced. Yeah.
Great. So the press cloth, for those who might not know, there's lots of different types of press cloths. The one that I use actually is one that someone gave me when Riley, my oldest, who is about to be 21, at the time of this broadcast, he will have been 21 for one whole day. And they gave me that when he was a baby. And it was this, it's just a thin cotton cloth. I was taking a sewing class when my child was an infant. And I needed a press cloth. They're like, oh, here, have this one. And it was just a nice gesture. And I have had it ever since. I have had this piece of press cloth for 21 years. And all you do is lay it down on your garment, and it really does help prevent it from scorching. It prevents it from, some fabrics, if the iron is too hot, it will leave a shine on the fabric because I think it's been singed or something. And then you can't get rid of that. You can't get rid of that singe. So it's really nice. The press cloth is just a small thing for that. They also make them out of Teflon. There's all different types. But it is a nice thing to use and develop a good pressing habit so that when you're pressing your garments, it's an extra precaution.
The press cloth also helps if you do a lot of fabrics that have prints or patterns on them, because sometimes those patterns, particularly if you do things that have any sort of shiny or metallic print, sometimes what they've used to get that on the fabric, even though your fabric might be a cotton spandex knit that should hold up to the heat well, the print on it is not the same, like if it's a painted on flower or print or whatever. And so the press cloth can help protect, number 1, not messing up your fabric, and number 2, not messing up the sole plate of your iron if some of that stuff transfers onto your iron.
Oh, that's an excellent point. I hadn't thought of that. Thank you for that. That's excellent.
Yeah, I've done that a time or two and been I should have put the pressing cloth down. So I keep it next to the iron. It's just a barrier layer. And even if I'm not sure how a fabric is going to do with the iron, just to be safe, I put it down. I also always use it if I'm doing anything that's white, so that if the iron leaks a little water or whatever, then that way it does not ruin it. Because there was a panel of a skirt that there were some tears over when I was making an Easter dress. But I was I can't fix it. Thank goodness I have enough fabric to cut another panel.
Oh my gosh. And I think that's absolutely right. For some reason, I have my stand-up ironing station is in this one area of the sewing room, but the pressing supplies are in another area. And so I got my ham, I got my seam roll, I got the pressing cloth, the clapper, but then I forget to bring out the pressing cloth. And I'm like, ugh, I really don't feel like walking the entire 15 steps to retrieve this pressing cloth. So let me go ahead and see what happens without it. And then I'm angry tears. And I'm like, oh, what can I do to cover up these ugly spots that just came or whatever, because I was just being impatient. So
don't play iron chicken. It never works out in your favor.
I'm telling you, I just made a cape at the Stitch Please retreat back in October, and it's a great looking cape. I'm very happy with it, but I ended up having to add bias binding around the top of the collar and up and down the front closure because I burnt it. I got it done. All I needed was a final press. I didn't feel like getting the pressing cloth, that new iron that the hotel provided, which was very nice. It was too hot. And my fabric is also slightly synthetic. And all these things I knew, but I was like, I'm done. I'm finally done with this. And then I was not done with it. And that was a whole set of making the bias binding, pressing the bias binding, attaching the bias. But it was like making a whole nother component to this garment, all because of a pressing error. And everything could have been prevented if I used the pressing cloth.
You fell for the iron chicken okie doke.
I totally did. Big time. My sad experience with not using a press cloth on a garment that I was really excited about making is just one example of why it's important to have good basic tools at your disposal. Up next, we'll talk about one of my absolute favorite notions in my sewing life. It's a little pricey, but it's really worth its weight in gold. I recently did an IGTV video about this tool, so you can check that out too. Here's Alicia and I talking about it right now. So let's shift to the fast turn tube turner set. I really feel like I have been some type of strange ambassador for the fast turn people. Ever since
I know at least 4 people that have them because of your ambassadorship. So I hope you got a free set coming.
I mean, these people don't know me from a can of paint, but I have been telling anybody who would listen, And so I think you're right that it could be an intermediate advanced gift, or it can be an upgrade or Sewist-to-Sewist, because that's how you got it. Because I think I'm a sewist. I told you about it, and you're a sewist. Oh, I showed you. I think I was like, see, just what? And so tell us, I guess, because I know I can talk about this doggone thing forever. But tell us about your experience with it since you are a recent user of the tool.
Yes, well, I have to give credit where credit was due, because I did not get it for myself. That was definitely a Sewist-to-Sewist gift. Well, I saw yours and thought, oh, that's so cool. It was my good buddy and yours who was ordering her set and was like, just nothing good comes of it if mine shows up and one doesn't come for Alicia too. And so she got me one too. And I was like, for me? So it's great. And I have never regretted that she bought it for me, because I would have been too stubborn too.
Hey, y'all, that's fine. I'm happy with the chopstick. I don't know why. I like spending 20 minutes trying to turn a tube with chopsticks and a safety pin.
As they say, tell the truth and shame the devil. So I totally would have been like, no, it's fine. And so we skipped that whole conversation when mine just showed up here, and I was like, all right, I'll keep it to myself then. But I have loved mine. I definitely use it for turning tubes. The other place where I have found it really useful is when I need to put an elastic in a waistband. I have used it for that as well. And so when I'm putting an elastic in a waistband where there's a channel and they want you to, and you've already attached the bodice and the skirt together, then I've been able to, if I leave the opening wide enough, it's a lot of fabric to do, but just make sure that you get it all on the copper tube. And so for the people that don't know what the fast turn is think like a piece of copper piping. And the set comes with a few different sizes of that copper piping, and it's got a little ring around it so that you have something to hold on to that's bigger than the pipe. And what you do for the fast turn is you feed that copper piping into the tube that you're turning, that you want to turn, like if you're trying to turn a strap or a bag handle. You feed that copper tubing into it, and then it comes with this thin, long wire that has a little pigtail cue at the end and a point. And you push that little pigtail end through the end of your fabric once you've gotten the tube fed through your piece that you want to turn. And you secure your fabric on that little pigtail end wire. And once you've got it secured, you pull the wire back through the tube until you get it back out. Then you can take the wire off, and it's fed enough of the fabric that you can just pull your little piece of fabric through. And what would have probably taken you 5 to 10 minutes with your chopstick or whatever method you were using prior to that. I know somebody said they used a highlighter to do theirs when we were talking about them at Beach Week. But what would have taken you 5 to 10 minutes that way with the fast turn, you have done in less than 30 seconds. It is one of those things that, could you do it without it? Absolutely. But it is just such a nice game changer to not have to fiddle with it, because you just don't make mistakes with the fast turn and lose it part way and all kinds of stuff. And frankly, I think it gives you a cleaner turn. And so it makes it easier to press it once you've gotten it through.
I agree, because the copper tube is so strong. And depending on the type of fabric you use, if you're using like a cotton fabric or something like that, that's more stiff, if you put your thumb at the seam allowance to open it or to press it one way, as you turn, it will stay open. You just have to keep your thumb there to kind of guide it along. And that's something that I found that does kind of help it be ready for pressing in a really good way. So yeah, I love the tube turner. I think that you're right. You could do it without it. But once I saw it demonstrated, and then once I did it myself, I was like, oh no, I cannot go back.
Never again.
It's kind of like having the option to have central air conditioning and then go back to a box fan in the window. You know,
right? Like, it's so true.
It's like, I don't want a box fan in the window. I think I want to make the investment in some central air.
Yeah.
And so, the last one thing we have is the press mat, which you had as an intermediate, advanced, or an upgrade. Do you use one of the wool press mats?
I don't have one. That's why I said, apparently that's more advanced than me, because I don't know why I need it.
So the reason that I have it is I also quilt. And so for me, I like to do paper piecing, and that requires a lot of trimming and pressing in between steps. And so that's one of the reasons that I like to have the little Oliso iron that we're going to be talking about, is because because it's so many seams, after every seam you need to press. So the seam is like 4 inches long. You need to trim it, then press it. You make your other seam, which is about 5 inches long. You sew it, you trim it, and then you press it. And so when you're working with quilting cottons, they respond very well to high heat and a little bit of steam, but not too much because you don't want to distort it. But the thick wool pressing mat really helps the fabric that you're pressing to wick, and it wicks the moisture from the steam iron right into the fibers of that quilt block. And it really helps the seams stay nice and flat. And that is that's a big advantage when you're doing paper piecing or other quilt blocks that require you to press as you go along. And having a little iron like the one we're going to talk about in a bit is a good example of that. And so the press mat really it doesn't burn. I did say that the press mat does kind of smell like animal when the steam gets going, because it's made out of lamb's wool, I guess.
Yes, it's animal.
It's actual animal. It's not synthetic. And so that's been pretty good. So I think that you're right. I think that is more of an upgrade to thing, or even a Sewist-to-Sewist gift. I got mine on Mass Drop years and years ago, but you want your seams to be kind of flat and compliant. And this does a really great job with that. So we're ready to head into either talking about a couple books as a Sewist-to-Sewist gift. And then I did want to spend some time talking about the Aliso irons. But is there anything else on the list that we could include on the holiday gift guide that I haven't mentioned?
The other one that I had in mind that I would include, a couple of little ones. One that I think would fall in the upgrade you set, but is not necessarily an expensive gift, is the Zirkle pin cushion or pin tray. And so the Zirkle pin tray is a magnetic pin tray that is magnetic magic in that it makes it, when you put the pin on, no matter how you throw it on there, it puts all the points towards the middle. So if you are a pin person, then I think the Zirkle would be a great upgrade gift to do. Then another one I had on that list is pattern weights. And I know some people prefer pinning because they think, oh, as you're cutting, you pin. But I prefer pattern weights in my Wonder Clips. And so there are the little beanbag pattern weights that you can get at Joann's, which are not the best value, I will say, because you get like 4 of them. But there are just so many cute options, whether it's you decide to make your own. So I have a set that I was gifted that are plumbing washers that somebody lovingly crocheted around. And so they're super cute, and they came in a little mason jar. And then I know there are folks that make them like Thanks I Make Them with the laser cut pattern weights. And so if you know somebody has a certain hobby or school that they're into, I think that's a really cute gift idea that you could both customize and personalize and give them something useful.
Yes. And so what number did you say that was? 2 or 3 for pattern weights, or a 1?
Oh, for which category?
For the pattern weights.
That one, I think that one kind of can fall into 3 of them. I think that could be a great beginner gift. I think that it could also be a great intermediate gift. And I also think it would be a great Sewist-to-Sewist gift.
All righty. That sounds good. And did you have the Zirkle as a number 3? I think that's what I put down, but that doesn't seem right. Is that what you had?
Well, now you confuse me because I don't know what the numbers mean. I have them by their names.
Upgrade you. A Zirkle. Is that an upgrade?
I think that could be an upgrade, yes.
I love mine. And sometimes I just throw pins at it at random. Just to see it.
Just because.
It's also a toy.
Yeah, that's true. That's true about a lot of sewing tools, though.
I know. It's so true. It's so true. Ooh, one last thing that I would add, since you're talking about pins, I have a retractable magnet that they use to retrieve fallen tools from car engines.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's nothing you'd buy in the sewing department at all. I think it extends maybe 2 feet. Or 2.5 feet. I got mine at Walmart for $5, but I know they probably have them at Harbor Freight. They're not very expensive at all, but it's a nice way to pick up pins from the floor, and you don't have to move your body or lean your body over and risk slipping or something like that, especially if you have a rolling chair on a smooth surface. So I think I might just add that it could be a beginning / advanced intermediate.
Yeah. And I think you need to have a little side note, because I know we talked about that once on an Instagram Live. And so that's reminding me of, I think, the podcast episode of Thinking Outside of Your Sewing Box for those sewing tools that are useful that you don't buy in the sewing section.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, we're going to totally do that because we just got a Harbor Freight in our town.
That'll be fun. You'll have a lot of fun with all the things you can find in there.
I know. I'm so excited / terrified. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we will talk about the irons, because that's also a nice gift. And we have a chance to talk about a couple of irons. So stay tuned. You're listening to the Holiday Gift Guide episode of the Stitch Please podcast. We've been talking about gifts divided into beginning, intermediate, advanced, upgrader, and Sewist-to-Sewist. Now, we're going to talk about Oliso irons. We were given 2 Oliso irons to try, the Pro and the Mini Project Iron, and we're going to discuss those now. Stay tuned. Okay, so we're back, and now we're going to talk about irons. Oliso, as we mentioned, gifted us these irons. I got a small one, the Mini Project Iron, and Alicia got the larger Pro Iron. So I'll just talk really briefly about the small one because I am eager to hear about the large one. So the one that I have is a little cute, it looks like a doll iron. It is so small. It is so cute. I'm looking at it right now because I'm in my sewing room, and the top of the iron, like the base of it, this is the model is M2 Pro. The sole plate is about 6 inches from tip to bottom, and the iron itself is less than 8 inches. It's about maybe 7.5 inches. It doesn't weigh very much, maybe 3 pounds. It might weigh, if you go to the Oliso website, they can give you the specs. Some of the things that I really like about the iron is that it has a really sharp pointed tip. I think they call this like a detail tip or a design tip. I'm looking at it now in comparison to another iron that I had. That's also a small iron, and it is, it's bigger than that one. It weighs a little bit more, but it feels a bit more substantial. Then another thing about the Oliso iron is that this does not have an auto shutoff, which I like. I like being able to leave it on, and this iron gets really, really hot. So that's something that I also like. Something that I'm also adjusting to is how to use the steam and release the steam. It really does steam well. And the way that it works is that you put your palm over the top of the iron, and then your thumb and forefinger squeeze simultaneously to press the steam side so that the steam releases. You don't just press one side or the other, you press them both. And I think that is kind of an ergonomic design so that 3 fingers are holding the iron and the 2 are doing the pressing, but your whole hand is moving. And so I think it's just really cute. It's like a kind of like, looks like a Barbie iron, because the one that I got was pink. So I think it's really cute. It also comes with this little resting / storage silicone base, like an iron rest. And so on one side, you flip it down and you can set your iron, your hot burning iron, you can set it on the resting side. And then when you're done and the iron is totally cooled off, you flip it over and you can put this on the resting side, which kind of has a notch at the bottom and a notch at the top. And you can pop it in there. I'm doing this now as I'm talking to you. And then you can hang it up, which if you see in my sewing room, and some of you have from the Instagram lives, I love hanging stuff up. I have all this fabric hanging up. I have all my threads mounted to the wall. So the idea of having a little iron that I can hang up on the wall is pretty exciting. So that is something I'm really enjoying about this iron. Right now I have it set up as my, like what I'm calling my right hand iron. And I have a stand-up iron station where I do pressing for like my large garments and my apparel. But when I'm doing small pieces, or if I need to do press as you go and I don't want to get up every 5 minutes after every seam, or if I'm doing paper piecing for quilting and I don't want to hop up all the time, I will set the iron up right next to the sewing machine, and my chair is like an office chair that rotates. And so I'll stitch a seam, trim the seam, twist to the pressing station, and I'll press it.
And this iron is perfect for that, especially since it has the steam and it does not auto shut off. I just find those auto shut offs so irritating. One of the disadvantages is that if you do keep it on like high for a really long time, it's an iron, it will get really hot. So they don't recommend that you keep it on the highest temperature for a really long time. So you can turn it off. And then when you want to use it again and turn it back on, like it heats up very fast. So you're not wasting any time waiting for it. So that's my my thoughts so far on the Oliso M2 Pro Mini Project Iron. I haven't done a lot with it. This is a new acquisition. But that's where I am right now. So what about you and the big boy or the big girl, the yellow one? The big lady.
Yes, the big lady. She's a lady. So I got the Oliso Pro TG1600 Smart Iron, and it has been really fun to use. There is a bit of a learning curve. One of the neat features about it is it has what they call scorch guards. And so it is different than the typical iron, kind of the way we learn to iron. This is totally dating myself, but I took home ec in middle school. And so, you learn to do your ironing and then you sit the iron up on its heel when you're not in the active moment of ironing or pressing something. And so with this Oliso iron, with this scorch guard, it has this technology where all you do is lay your hand on the handle and it will go up and down on its own. And so you never rest this iron on its heel. And so because that muscle memory has been built into me for so many years, that took a little getting used to. And sometimes I still confuse my brain a little bit and get it wrong. But I love that technology because what I found it useful for doing when I was working on, a duster pattern that I was testing. And I got to a point where I was pressing and I needed to make an adjustment in the way that something was laying. And so it was very nice to be able to literally leave my iron right there.
We had a bit of a recording blip during this part of the interview, but we quickly get back on track.
You were mentioning that you were working on a duster pattern and that I guess it must have really long seams. And so can you talk a bit more about that process?
Absolutely, yes. I was working on this pattern and it has long seams, but there are also certain points where you're dealing with smaller kind of fiddly bits, if you will, where, for instance, you've hemmed the bottom of the garment, but you're still turning up and sorting out the neckband. And so, you start to pressing something and you get to a point and realize that you've not turned something or adjusted it to where it needs to be before you put that press in it, where it's going to be a bit more set. And so it was very nice to just take my hand off the iron and let the Scotch Guard do it, where the iron stayed right there for me while I made that adjustment and then was able to just hold on to the iron and let the heat drop back onto my fabric without having to run the risk of what typically happens in that scenario of you move the iron off to the side and then you end up adjusting more of something than you meant to, or your whole garment shifts on you, or trying to get back to that spot, or feeling like you need a third hand to move the thing, hold the thing, and bring the iron back.
That's right.
It was very nice. It felt like it gave me the extra hand that I have always wanted in my ironing. And what I appreciate about it is that it's sturdy and gives a good solid press. So it did a really nice job with that. But the iron isn't super heavy. And with that Scotch Guard, it means that I'm not having to do as much picking up of the iron. And so it just felt a little bit more effortless.
Oh, that's fantastic. Excellent. I was wondering about that because I tend to like an iron that's a bit weighty. And I remember when I first saw an Oliso iron, I think that I was just, of course, not used to it. And so I had left it sit down. And then it hopped up on its feet. I was like, oh my gosh, is this like, Beauty and the Beast, where all the teacups were talking? I was like, is this thing about to break out in the song right now?
Right.
But I was like, this thing hopped up and scared me half to death. But no, it's really cool. And so we're thankful to Oliso for sharing their, giving us these products to review and to think about. And I know that you said that you actually needed an iron. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, no, it worked out lovely because my iron was doing this leaking thing where sometimes it would waterboard your garments and you just never know. And it was one of those like, do I really want to spend the money on an iron? But I told you already, I'm stubborn. So just don't fault my Virgo nature about these things.
Your Virgo nature.
And so, but what's funny about it is I remember seeing the Oliso. So this is definitely one that I think is a great intermediate gift or a Sewist-to-Sewist gift or even an upgrade your gift. Because I remember seeing one at a conference. Gosh, that's probably been a good 3-4 years ago now. They were a sponsor at a conference that I went to and I saw it and I'm like, that's nice. But I'm not trying to invest that kind of money in an iron. I just don't think I need it. And I felt like the iron that I had at the time worked well enough. But as I've used it over time and learned what I like and don't like about an iron, some of these features now, I can totally appreciate them. Whereas at that time, like it is literally the same iron that I played with at that conference. They might have tweaked a few of the features in that amount of time, but I remember just not being inspired by it then. And now I'm like, oh yeah, no, this is great. Like, oh no, I want this thing. So if I had to send it back, if they just let me borrow it for a minute to test it, I would be kind of sad about sending it back and being like, I think I lost it.
That's right. Exactly. I don't know what happened to y'all's iron, but thank you.
Right. So it is nice. And the bigger one has that detailer tip that you were mentioning it. And that has been helpful too. I did use that when I was working on just as I was testing the iron to just kind of get a feel for it before I put it on one of my sewing projects. I had a couple of shirts that are on the stack that are probably going to be in my donation pile for the end of the year, frankly. But I had just washed them and I wanted to at least give them a little press because I don't like donating things that look like little wrinkled balls. Right. And so since I had them sitting there, I used it to do some pressing on those shirts and a couple other garments that I had to just get a feel for it. And like one of them has this belt that's attached to the shirt that has pin tucks on it. And so that detailer tip was really nice for being able to get in and get under that pin tuck. And so I really got to see that. And that was quite a nice feature because I think some other irons have something that they call that, but this one has a really good, like basically a split between the sole plate and the body of the iron so that when you need to get into a space. So for this one, there was a piece of the fabric belt that I needed to get under. And so that split was perfect for putting that piece in there and being able to get under there and to get a lot of really good ironing coverage, still getting things done with that. So those were some of the features I really appreciated about it.
And I think what you're also describing is that to have the iron hover like it does, to have the iron pop up, is not like a gimmick. It's something that's a really advanced and a really useful technical feature, because when you're trying to press all those pin tucks and you want it to lay a certain way, you have to make little adjustments and you just can't leave the iron just kind of sitting there. But if you're able to take your hand off and then it pops up, you can make a quick adjustment and then start ironing and then start pressing again. I think that that's, a really nice thing, a really good advantage to have. So that's wonderful. Well, I'm glad you liked it. I'm really glad you liked it. So, and I'm enjoying the little baby one. I think it's really cute. It's kind of like if it was a tiny bit smaller, it'd be like a Barbie Dreamhouse iron, because I think it's really cute. And I also do like how it hangs up. But I know we're starting to wrap things up, but I wanted to spend some time talking about the Sewist-to-Sewist gifts that you had talked about. So these aren't things, everybody, that you can just, like, there's no links to these. There's no things that you can find on Amazon, but pay attention to what Alicia's talking about here, because these are some pretty cool gift ideas. So tell us a bit about what you developed as Sewist-to-Sewist, because I was thinking about like the books I mentioned, like that pattern alteration book and the Sandra Betsina or, Real Fit or Real Pants for Real People, like those kind of books. And I'll drop the links to those books in the show notes. But what Alicia was talking about is really, really special. So I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, so these are gifts that I am extremely fortunate to have my crew of sewing buddies, like not only my ones across the country, like my Black Women Stitch friends, but my crew that I have right here that are local to me. And so we've been able to get together to have sewing dates and different things. And so these are some sewing gift ideas that we have used to give to some people. And so an example of one that I know we've gifted people, a friend and I have come together and gifted it a couple of times, is if there is a pattern that they're interested in or that we think would look really great on them, or it's one that we know looks great on everyone. Like, for instance, I have never seen a cashmere Appleton dress that has not worked out, no matter the size. And so that one makes an excellent gift to give the paper pattern. And one of the things I love about the indie patterns in particular is that they usually have a beautiful presentation with the instruction booklet and all of the pieces that you get to them. And so maybe a great Sewist-to-Sewist gift would be to give somebody the pattern along with essentially making a kit for them, a fabric that either you've seen them admiring in the store or you know that they would love or fits their color story or you think would look great on them. So maybe the pattern, the fabric that they would need, and then if it calls for any special notions like elastic or buttons, maybe gifting them those things. Another would be if maybe it's an indie pattern that is one that they are not a taper of the PDF patterns, which I fall into that category, then maybe
Yes.
a gift certificate to PDF plotting with the pattern and the kit for them so that they can have all of the things so that you've given them a project. Another would be there are some certain little things that people like to have for their machine, like the machine aprons or different projects. Like there's that one. Another one is there are some DIY tutorials for making your tailor's ham or the sausage, which is also the seam roll. And so doing a cute little printout of one of those DIY sets of instructions with all of the supplies they might need for that, for the seam roll, including the sawdust or whatever you're going to. There's different recommendations. The sawdust is one of the easy ones to acquire. And so with all of the pieces to it, and so they get a thoughtful sewing gift and it's a project. So think like the way that you might give somebody an embroidery kit where it has the hoop and the design and the thread and everything they need, but a sewing version of that you get to personalize for the person.
That is so thoughtful. I really like that idea. And so it gives us an opportunity to really communicate. I think what they call that, like your love languages, it's this kind of gift that you're giving that recognizes, something that they love and doing something for them that they might not choose to do for themselves, or maybe they would choose to do it, but that you're seeing something in them, or you just want to communicate your love of sewing with them. And I think that those are all really beautiful and really thoughtful gift ideas. So thank you for sharing those. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up. But I wanted to ask you to talk a little bit about where people can find you on the socials, and maybe to talk a little bit about the class that you and Jill are going to be doing at Craftcation 2020.
Yeah, sure. So on Instagram, you can find me at HRH Alley, which stands for Her Royal Highness, because I told you, extra all the time. So that is where you can find me on Instagram. And the class that we are going to be doing in 2020, one of them is a remix of a class that we taught this year at Craftcation. This will be our second year teaching there, which we're so excited to teach. We've been going to the conference now. I think this will be our 6th or 7th year attending. And this will be our second year teaching. So the remix class is some made to measure leggings / yoga pants that we are doing. And for that class, what we do is you leave with a proper set of lower body measurements. You get to do try your hand and do a little pattern drafting, because we will actually draft the pattern for your leggings according to those measurements, and then we will stitch up those leggings. And I can report that at our class last year, every single participant got to leave with a really super awesome pair of leggings that they customized for themselves, down to how high or low they wanted their waistband, and whether they wanted full length pants or crop length or knee length pants. And there was a runway show, so everybody got to show off their awesome leggings that they were super proud of. It was a lot of fun. And so we are doing that class this year, and rumor has it that it might be on Sergers this year, which might be really fun that we get to do the Serger class. Then we are also doing a class that is working with flat pattern adjustments and learning the elements of flat pattern and how that applies to your sewing pattern, so that you can use that to learn how to read the pattern and how to make the adjustments that you need to make to your pattern from the flat pattern, as opposed to just trying to figure it out on the fly in your fabric. And so it's once you learn those elements of the pattern, then you can actually look at the pattern before you ever put scissors to fabric to learn how to make adjustments for it. So that one is going to be really fun. And then we are also doing an activity. It's not as much a class, but they have different activities when they have some more, I won't say social activities, but people have different energy levels and ways they like to go about interacting. And so, for instance, for some people that maybe don't want to go to the dance party but still want to be social, then the activity we're going to be doing for that one is something that's called Pimp Your Tote Bag. And so you get your tote bag for the conference. And so we're going to have all kinds of different supplies and ideas and things where you get to pimp your tote bag for the activity. And so we're going to hang out and pimp tote bags together. So I think that one is going to be super duper fun as well. And since this is the holiday gift giving guide, that is another one that we should definitely add to the link for, because the conference registration for Craftcation 2020 is still open.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, their website is Dear Handmade Life, and it's run by an awesome company of, I want to say mostly women. I think it's all women, but I don't want to exclude anybody if that's wrong, but they are dope humans that run that company. I 100% vouch for them being the most awesome people. And it is a great experience and a lot of fun. And they put so much work into it. And I have never regretted it. It is something that I look forward to every single year.
Well, you know that I got my talk about a Sewist-to-Sewist gift. I think that you all didn't give me a Craftcation registration, but I totally signed up because on the strength of your recommendation. So I'm really excited about it. And I'm definitely excited to do the flat pattern adjustment class. That's something that's like my top list of top choices for classes. I'm really excited about all of it. And I will definitely include a link to Craftcation in the show notes. So again, Alicia, thank you so much for joining me. And thank you for sticking with me through all of our technical challenges and all of our lessons that we have learned. I really feel like this has been I think we tried to start at 5:00 my time, and it's like 10:30 now. So, thank you.
It was my pleasure. I had a lot of fun. It is never a waste to get to geek out about sewing and to give people ideas and inspire them, whether it's things you already have or things that you want to put on your wish list or look into, or just nod your head and agree. It is always great to be in community with people that are into your thing. So I love it. Thank you so much for having me. This has been fun.
That was Alicia Holland, sewist, attorney, Craftcation teacher, Black Women Stitch member and just amazing friend. She and I spent 5.5 hours trying to get this podcast episode together because we had technical difficulties. So I wanted to give her a shout out for her patience and enthusiasm and kindness. I also want to acknowledge my neighbor, Max, who did an amazing job helping with the sound and helping to fix all of the errors that came through with the disrupted recordings. So thank you so much, Max. I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of the Stitch Please podcast. The holiday gift guide is a really extensive list of lots of different types of projects and products that you can use to support your sewing and to give as gifts for sewing friends. Please check out the show notes that have links to all the products that we talked about. And again, if you do end up buying them from Amazon, the Stitch Please podcast gets a little bit of money, so we do appreciate that. And finally, we can announce the winner of the Oliso Mini Project Iron. I would love to be able to insert a drum roll or something like that, but y'all know my podcast editing skills are kind of on the struggle bus, so I don't really know how to do that, but maybe, hold please, let's see if I can figure that out. Well, that's not exactly a drum roll, but I did spend about 45 minutes figuring out how to put it in there, so I figured after almost an hour that I would just drop it in, and y'all wouldn't mind. And hopefully our winner won't mind. And the winner is Black Pearl Magic. BlackPurl Magic. So congratulations, Black Pearl Magic. I will be in touch with information on how to contact Oliso for your mini project iron. Congratulations. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Stitch Please podcast, the official podcast of Black Women Stitch, the sewing group where Black Lives Matter. There are a variety of ways that you can support the program, and you're doing it right now. By listening to the podcast, it does help us grow. Another way to do that is to rate the podcast, review it, subscribe to it. All of these things are ways that you can support the podcast without having to spend any money at all. If you would like to spend some money to support us, there are ways to do that as well. You can make direct donations to our Patreon site for monthly contributions, as well as one-time contributions to PayPal, Cash App, or Venmo. And finally, we have another cute, very adorable way for you to support the Black Women Stitch project. It's a pin, a PIN enamel lapel pin that's very cute. It's about 2 inches wide and 1.5 inch tall, and it's of the Black Women Stitch logo. And that is $15 with free shipping to the U.S. And so if you drop $15 in the PayPal, Venmo, or Cash App accounts, and then send me your if you send me your mailing address to my email, either at blackwomenstitch@gmail.com, or you send me a direct message on the Black Women Stitch Instagram page, we will put the pin in the mail to you. Again, free shipping, $15 for the pin, and all of this goes to support the Black Women Stitch project. Thank you again for joining us this week. Come back next week and we will help you get your stitch together.